Hello, my name is Tristan, aka Child of the Wilderness, and I thought it might be interesting to go through how I design the visuals for More Notes, Less Thoughts. So, without further ado, let's get into it. All the visuals in the piece are generated with this one image. And basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to redesign them so you can see how they were made. It all starts with this one image, and it's got a bit of a funny story behind it. It's not particularly interesting on its own, but so I take the bus into work every morning, and on the second floor they have these screens which sometimes show like stops or ads or whatever. But Birmingham being Birmingham, they're often smashed. Which creates this kind of like cracked screen effect with like the ink running and stuff like that, which I always think looks pretty cool. I've got another one here that I might use at some point. That's what I used. I thought it had the potential to maybe suit the music. And just to be clear, the music always comes first, and then I design visuals that I think suit it, are a suitable like parallel or complement to it. We got that. First thing I did was crop it because all I want is the screen. So cropping it in, doodly doo. That's pretty close. And then we just fill that out, and then I stretch it out like that. So that's good, but like say the image isn't great. I just took it with my phone. It needs some work. The main issue that I had, at least initially, was the contrast. So I threw on some contrast plugins. Effects, rather. I keep calling them plugins, but they're not. They're effects. It even says so there and there. So I shouldn't be forgetting. So the next thing I did, I think I flipped it. Which kind of looks a bit better because it flips the whole thing, the uncropped version. So you've got the pole here, and you have this like thing that it looks like a little gremlin thing, like it's like spiky hair, and it's got like this like arm sticking out and legs sticking out, and it's like perched on the pole. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was quite nice. It wasn't really suiting the music though, so I carried on fiddling around with it. And the other things I added next was a heat thingy and a prism thingy. So the heat thingy creates this heat wave effect that you can see here, which is going to become quite useful later on. And then the prism, makes the visuals a bit more vivid and adds some like more brighter colors in. But I was quite fond about this for a while, but, clearly not fond enough because I carried on fiddling around. And this is when I had a bit of a revelation. This kind of music that has these repetitive elements to it and is like a bit hypnotic, actually. In my opinion, it suits like quite kaleidoscopic visuals because those are also quite hypnotic, and that's kind of the complement. I find them very complementary. I like them together. So that's what I did. I threw on a kaleidoscopic visual effect, which is like, and if you put it here-ish, then you can see it's starting to look like what we ended up with. Starting though. First thing is that these effects are out of order. And there we go. So now it actually looks red, which is what we were after. If you, this is an effect that I think I came up with when working on Distorted Thoughts. I never actually used it for that piece, but if you have the angle at 0 and then move it to 359.9 and 1 minute in, it means it's going to do a full rotation in that time. So you can see them And if I take off the heat effect, you'll see that it's a bit boring. They're just kind of moving steadily. I thought the heat effect was quite neat. Also reminded me of some of the animations from Pink Floyd, The Wall, if anyone is familiar with that. But yeah, these kind of things are like meeting up and then they split off to meet the other one. It's quite charming. I quite liked it. So that was that. But it's just not. It's not. It needs to be more vivid. It's not eye catching enough. So I threw on some sharpening effects. I threw on 6 actually. I really went to town. That's 6, yeah. And I put them all to 100%, which makes it look a bit more like a, I don't know, like an Andy Warhol painting or something. One of the annoying things about Final Cut Pro, by the way, is that on playback, it's all blurry. So I have to pause it to actually see what it's going to look like, which is annoying. But anyway. So that's what we've got at the moment. Pretty close to what we ended up with, at least for the first half. I also had, if you can see these, if you change the size of the collider tile effect, then what I did have was it changing size. So I had it kind of build, increase in size, start quite small, increase in size, and then decrease in size again. But I'm not gonna do that now. But that is quite an important part of it because it just spices up the visuals, makes them a bit less static, a bit less boring. So that was that. And if we bring the music in, you can. And something that I quite liked about it was, so you have this repetitive element to the music and this kind of repeating visual, but you also have so there's a complement there, but there's also a contrast in that the visual is moving very slowly and the music is quite frantic. So I thought there was an interesting kind of complement going on there. But then we reach the second half and it changes. And I was like, I can't keep this. It has to change. What can I do? So what I did, and this is an effect that I came up with, I say came up with, discovered at least. I think when working on Babbling Aliens, well, that's what I call it. It's the one on the channel with the funny title with all the symbols. And it's where is it? It's a perspective tile. So you throw that on, and there's something quite cool you can do with it, which is that. And if you kind of you can adjust it in various ways, but this is kind of what I'm looking for here. Oh yeah, I need to turn the music down. So with the pieces rotating and you have them repeating basically to infinity, and you can see them kind of just repeating off into the distance here, and it's probably not something that you're supposed to use, but that's often where I find the most interesting stuff. So you have it just repeating off into the distance rather, and you have this kind of multicolored static effect, which I think is like really cool. And what it does is that there's a change in the music in that second half. There's the space increases massively. You have this big bass drum come in like, and the reverb is massive, and it takes a while to fade out. So there's a big change in space, and I wanted to do something that felt, like like that change, it was being reflected in the visuals. So this is kind of what I settled with, and it's kind of like it's kind of the effect of like looking down through the ceiling of a cathedral or something, and I wanted that sense of space about it, sense of size. Then, as that second half reaches its climax, I felt like I had to do something to, to mirror that. So I had it zoom in a bit, and then I put a radial effect on it, which is somewhere there, which is a bit much at full effect. But if you put it down to something like 10, then you can see that this is kind of what happens. And if we take it off, when it zooms in, we're just gonna try and when it zooms in to this multicolored staticky kind of stuff going on here, it gets a little disorienting. I was getting like a little dizzy. I hope it didn't affect anyone, but and I thought it needs to the visual needs to do something to match the climax of that second half. So I figured this might be a good idea. So if you do it somewhere like that, and it starts kind of like swirling around, and there are some swirly effects in the music as well, which kind of fit it. Also, with a title like More Notes, Less Thoughts, it gives the effect of thoughts spiraling out of control, which works as well. But I feel it's important to stress that the basic approach is just a very playful one. I was just throwing on effects, combining effects, trying out different parameters, seeing what worked, what didn't, what fit with the music, what didn't. And that was it. That was just the approach that meanderingly led to what we got. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed the piece and found this interesting, and I'll see you in the next one.